What's up, guys? Welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you. New series. This is the inaugural episode, but I'm going to do this thing monthly. I'm an avid Letterboxd user. I log all my films on there. The information for my profile is down below if you want to follow me over on Letterboxd and get all this information in real time. At the beginning of every month, I will recap the previous month, all my new watches, first-time watches. I will rank them according to how much I enjoyed them. I'll also go ahead and give you my score, but we're going to rank all of the movies that I watched for the first time in the month of May 2021 on this first edition of the Letterboxd LowDown. Thanks for joining me. I normally try to get in a new movie at least every day, possibly every other day, maybe like 4 or 5 new movies a week. That didn't really happen this month. There's going to be 18 films that I'm going to rank here, and I'll talk about each of them a little bit. But coming in at number 18 is a film that I had to watch for live stream for The Cure, and I went ahead and watched it. It's a film on Netflix called 365 Days, or 365 DNI. This is a film in the style of 50 Shades of Grey, where it's kind of like an erotic romance drama / thriller, I guess. It's not good, guys. It is full of misogyny and just extremely problematic, especially from a female point of view. But our main character, Massimo, is kind of like this Italian mafia boss, and he just falls in love with this girl. Her name is Laura, I believe, in the film. The premise of 365 Days, and then I'll probably just leave it at that. The premise is that this mob boss, Massimo, is attracted to Laura, okay, because he saw her on a beach the day that a tragedy happened in his life, and then she went away. So she's always been this kind of like something in his mind for several years dealing with this tragedy he associates with her, and she was this beautiful thing that he saw while this tragic event was occurring. So he's kind of become obsessed with her image in his mind. He runs into her later and basically kidnaps her because he's like, oh my God, that's the woman that I'm infatuated with, and then gives her an ultimatum that if she wants to be set free, he's going to give her 365 days to fall in love with him. That's the movie. That's the basic plot line of this nearly 2-hour film. There's a lot of inappropriate touching. There's a lot of borderline molestation in the first 2/3 of the movie. And then it really comes to kind of an unbelievable climax, no pun intended, between the two main characters. And while I really, really like the last 3 minutes of the movie, the last cliffhanger that they hang us onto, I also kind of loathe it because I know it's going to bring us a sequel, and I've heard they've already announced that. Netflix made billions from this, got millions of views, so there will be a sequel. There is a demographic for this. It's not me. My number 18, the worst ranked film I saw in May, was 365 Days. Stay away from it, guys. All right, coming in at number 17 is a film that I just saw for the first time because of a Patreon series I do. I do a Patreon series where I watch something for the very first time that I've never seen before. And this is a movie from 1994, Ghoulies 4. Now, horror fanatics or 80s horror fans will probably know the Ghoulies. Ghoulies was good. Ghoulies 2 was good. Ghoulies 3 was... good is not a word I would use, but it was somewhat entertaining. Ghoulies Go to College. It was kind of fun and schlocky. Ghoulies 4, the franchise literally fell off a cliff, and we never heard from it again. Ghoulies 4 was definitely the death of this franchise. It's not even a horror movie, guys. They replaced the puppeteering and kind of the practical effects that we were used to in the first couple of films with literal, little people in costume. And there's only really 2 of them. You know, the Ghoulies were several of these little monsters running around. There was a lot of really great prosthetics and 80s puppeteering going on. None of that is around in Ghoulies 4. The script is absolutely horrendous. There's no continuity in it. It doesn't make any sense. It becomes kind of like this buddy cop comedy almost with these Ghoulies running around. But again, it's just 2 little people in suits. Not the Ghoulies that we know, that we love. There's no toilet in this movie, guys. Any fans of the Ghoulies franchise will know, but there's no toilet in it. I only gave Ghoulies 4 1 star over on Letterboxd, and it is the 17th ranked movie I saw, almost the worst in the month of May. My number 16 ranked film for the month of May was one that I saw on Shudder. I'm usually drawn to these Shudder horror originals that they put out, and they do really, really good work. But the movie I'm putting at number 16 is a movie that I didn't really like. It had some great blood and gore and some special effects, but aside from those blood and gore moments, the rest of the movie fell super flat for me. It's a movie called Skull the Mask, which is a new Shudder original. It's a foreign film, and it just tells the story about this ancient mask that if someone puts it on, then they kind of take on this serial killer mentality. So you don't want to have the mask on. It's made actually out of a human skull. The kill scenes were really graphic and really bloody, and it was great practical blood, no CGI in this movie. It was shot really grainy and really vintage. So that stuff I really, really liked. It's just that the story was bland. I mean, anytime there wasn't a kill on screen, I was literally on the verge of falling asleep. If you like blood and gore, maybe somebody will do a supercut and put all the kill scenes together from Skull the Mask, and that would be a great like 15, 20-minute movie. But the other hour and 15, hour 20 is just dull, no character development, and the story, you're just kind of waiting for somebody else to put the mask on and perform another kill. You don't really care about any of the other stuff that's going on. So if you're a horror fiend and you love that stuff, I would say give it a go. But otherwise, I only gave 2 stars to Skull the Mask, and it is my number 16. Now, as we go to my number 15, this is a film that I can't recommend, but it's one of those that's kind of like teetering on the fence a little bit because of the performances in the film. I actually did a review of this movie on my YouTube channel. You can go back and watch that review if you would like, for The Woman in the Window. Amy Adams, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Gary Oldman, they all give great performances in this movie. Julianne Moore's in there as well. The performances in this movie are really good, and so is the direction of Joe Wright. I like Joe Wright's films, and I mentioned that on my review. So the aesthetic and the environment of the movie, it's very creepy, very dark, very Hitchcock-esque, which of course makes sense because this is basically a reimagining of Rear Window. You know, Amy Adams has agoraphobia. She's stuck in her home. She's spying on her neighbors. Weird shit happens at her neighbor's house. Is it going on in her mind? Is it really happening? We're not supposed to know as the audience. She doesn't know. It's the whole thing. So it turns into a psychological thriller, and parts of it work. When they don't work, they really don't work. Like I said, I can't recommend Woman in the Window, but like I mentioned on my review on this channel, if you're a fan of Amy Adams and you like suspense movies, you'll probably dig it. If you like that Hitchcock era suspense thriller, you'll probably find things about Woman in the Window that you enjoy, and you can give it a go. It is streaming on Netflix. I only gave it 2.5 stars, which, like I said, is right in that kind of area where it's like, it was okay, but I'm probably never going to watch it again. And that's how I feel about The Woman in the Window, which sits at my number 15 for the month of May. All right, my number 14 is another movie that I gave 2.5 stars, and it's a movie that there were parts of it that I enjoyed, but I'm not going to watch it again, guys. And also, it was a little lackluster in comparison to the previous 2 films, because this was wrapping up a trilogy. It's To All the Boys, Always and Forever, which is a Netflix original starring Lana Condor. I love her, and she is very charming, and it does a great job in this series as a whole, but this was the worst of the 3 films in my opinion, and it was kind of a bland way to wrap up the series too, because I was really enjoying these kind of romantic comedy, you know, kind of like high school romantic comedies up until this point. Because, you know, the first 2 movies were really about her and Peter, the main male character, kind of getting together and how, you know, the journey of them to become a couple. So at the end of the second movie, they're officially a couple. Everything's great. So this movie kind of takes on like them making out and like what happens after you become a couple. And I don't know, I feel like in a romantic comedy, kind of like the quest is usually the story. So I don't know, I feel like this movie was kind of tacked on the end, and it didn't really need to be. We don't really get anything added to the story. It's about her going to college and trying to get into the same college as Peter. And then we have this subplot where her dad, who is portrayed by John Corbett, who I love, is getting married to their next door neighbor. And it's just like a lot of different stuff thrown in here to kind of like wrap up a trilogy. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I absolutely love Lana Condor as LJ in the film. I think she's great, and she really carries this one specifically. Without her and her charisma, I would have hated this movie. But at the end of the day, I gave it a 2.5. If you love the first 2, you kind of have to see it to round out the trilogy. But other than that, I say stay away from it if you're just looking for a romantic comedy. This is not the one. So To All the Boys, Always and Forever. Another movie I'm kind of on the fence about is my number 13. It is another movie that I ranked a 2.5 on Letterboxd, and it's a film called Blue Miracle. It's based on a true story about a guy in the Miami, Florida area that runs an orphanage, and in order to get money to save the orphanage after a hurricane, he decides to enter a blue marlin fishing competition with a fishing captain who has won the tournament many times, portrayed by Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid's the only name in this film. The rest of the actors are pretty relatively unknown, but it's supposed to be this uplifting story about the underdog kind of overcoming the odds, saving the orphanage. It's based on a true story, so I find this like difficult to say, but it's hard to believe. Like there's, and I think they dialed it up for cinema. They dialed it up for movie making. So in that respect, if you dial it down a little bit, then and you read it in the paper or something like that, then it's a feel-good story. It kind of makes sense. But this movie was just a little too theatrical, a little too dramatic, in my opinion, and it took a little too many liberties with the story, in my opinion. I don't know the story. I'm not from Florida. You know, the kid actors in the film, sometimes kids can be a bit hard to get through, and this was a movie with a lot of kids in it. There were some that did a really good job, and then there were others that it was like they were literally reading off of the screenplay as they were performing in front of the camera. You know, Dennis Quaid is kind of, I don't really know why he took this role. He doesn't look great in the film. He looks like he's aged about 20 years since the last time I saw him, which was not 20 years ago. So, but it was fun to see him. I mean, you know, he's a relatively familiar face, and it was fun to see him in that kind of anti-hero role as this old, worn-down fisherman. As we get to the last act of the film, and a lot of the positive things start to happen, it just gets a little cheesy, guys. But at the end of the day, it was just a little too unbelievable for me, the way they dialed up all the theatrics. And then the performances from the kids kind of brought it down for me a little bit. But it's not a horrible movie. It's one of those that I'm on the fence about, like a lot in this kind of middle tier area. But I gave it 2.5. It's called Blue Miracle. It is streaming over on Netflix if you want to check it out. All right, coming in at my number 12, guys, is another one that I did a rapid reaction movie review on here on this channel. I put a tag up there for you if you want to check it out, but it's another Shudder original, the second one showing up for the month of May, and it's a movie called Fried Berry, directed by Ryan Kruger. I gave this one also a 2.5 over on Letterboxd. The only difference with this 2.5, though, as opposed to the few that came before this, is I think this is a movie I probably would rewatch. And frankly, I want to rewatch. There was a lot of stuff in this film that it was like Kruger was trying to tell us a story through visuals. And sometimes it's hard because the lead character of Barry in the film is possessed by an alien. And that's basically the story. The alien takes over his body. It's an abduction film. And then he just kind of wanders the streets and does all these things as a human, trying to learn about humanity and Earth, you know, things that are foreign to him, obviously, because he's an alien. And Barry doesn't talk, obviously, after that point because the alien can't speak English. So we don't get a lot of dialogue after the first, quarter of the movie. It's really just a visual storytelling, and it's a lot of weird visuals, guys. If you're a fan of just mind crazy sci-fi stuff, then I say check out Fried Berry because it is a visceral, visually consuming watch. But it is hard to watch at times, and it is definitely an acquired film. You will have to be a horror fanatic and maybe even more niche, like an alien horror fanatic, like sci-fi horror, to really enjoy Fried Berry. It is weird, guys, but that's one of the reasons why I like it, because I like Kruger's direction of it, the cinematography, the visuals, the score, all those kind of technical things that really created a very visually appealing watch for me, even though the subject matter was difficult at times. So Fried Berry is a Shudder original. If you have Shudder, you can watch it. It's weird. Be warned, it is weird, but it sits at my number 12 for the month of May. Coming in at number 11 is the first film that we're bumping up into that 3-star range. And it's really for the performance of one individual. I'm not even kidding. But it's a movie called Mainstream, which was a film that the theatrical release got kind of messed up a little bit because of what has been going on in the world. And it ended up going straight to streaming. And I think it may have released in select cities, just kind of sparse here and there. But it stars Andrew Garfield. And he plays this character. It's directed by Gia Coppola, who I also love her as a director. The direction of the film is great. It really tells the story. But he plays this character, Link, in the film, and Link is kind of down on his luck. In fact, you never really know. He might even be a homeless dude on the streets of LA. It doesn't really tell us his backstory, which is something I would have liked to have gotten from Mainstream. It does give a little hints about it. But he plays this guy who's just very, fascinating, and people are just kind of, drawn to his kind of, theatrics in public. But they're not theatrics. It's just him. It's just who he is. You know, you probably know somebody that's just a very interesting person to know and watch. And that's Link in this film. And Maya Hawke plays a character. She's the other lead, and she's the female character who wants to be a YouTube star. She wants to be famous, and she wants to kind of make her videos and make her art, and she wants people to watch them, but she's not getting views. She's really struggling in that space, in that social media space. And she meets Link and films him kind of inadvertently doing something crazy, and it blows up on YouTube on her channel. And so she enters into this partnership with him to kind of make videos where she makes the videos and he's the star of the videos. And he takes on this character, Not So Special is what he calls himself. And it just blows up, and it goes from there. There's great supporting roles in the film from Jason Schwartzman, Johnny Knoxville, a lot of great supporting characters. And it's, again, like Fried Berry, it's a very visually appealing movie. I love Gia Coppola's direction of it. But Andrew Garfield literally just sinks his teeth into this role. And he does that often. This is the first role he's done since Under the Silver Lake. So he had almost a 2-year break, or a little over a 2-year break between films. And this is a very similar project in that way, because in Silver Lake, he was definitely the standout for me. And in Mainstream, he's easily the standout. I saw this year he's going to be portraying Tammy Faye's husband, Jim Baker, in a biopic. I can't wait to see his over-the-top performance in that. So Andrew Garfield always brings the pain. And despite just kind of like the weird choices that were made in the movie and some kind of idiosyncrasies I have with it, his performance really carried it to a movie that I could say that I recommend. So Mainstream, especially if you're in social media, if you're on YouTube, if you dig that kind of stuff, this is a movie you almost have to watch because it's very prophetic in that way. But Mainstream, starring Andrew Garfield, for me, I gave it 3 stars over on Letterboxd. All right, guys, another film I gave 3 stars to that I've actually been reconsidering it. Maybe dropping it down a little, and I'll maybe try to say why. But I did give a review of this film and rapid reaction right when I saw it, which I'll also throw a card up here for you if you want to check it out. But it's Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, which released in theaters and is also currently streaming on Netflix, so you have the option to watch it in the theater or at home as we're sitting here right now. The film stars Dave Bautista, among many others. You know, if you're alive and you like this type of movie, you've probably either seen it or heard about it, so I won't go deep into the plot. But the reasons, the problems I have with the movie, well, there's a lot, but I'll just point out a few big ones that are maybe going to bring it down from that 3-star rating for me as I've reflected on it, so to speak. And I do want to rewatch it as well to give it another go also. But aside from Bautista and the girl that plays his daughter, the human characters are horrible in it. I don't connect to any of them. There's some good scenes that they're involved in, but it's not because of their character development or their personality on camera. I'm just not connected to them. What I am connected to is the zombie effects and the zombies themselves and the different things that Snyder introduces into this world, where he's ultimately trying to create a universe with different zombie rules that we're not used to seeing. And I feel like he does a great job and has a lot of courage in doing that. The problem is that's less than half the movie. The movie spends way too much time on the human characters, and them getting to Las Vegas initially takes like an hour for them to get there. So before we really even see zombies, I mean, aside from like the cold open, I mean, it's crazy. It just takes, Snyder takes too long. And I know he's heavily involved in the editing in his films and that type of stuff, but I wish somebody would grab him and say, dude, you've made something great here. Let me edit it for you. Because then we as an audience as a whole would possibly get more out of it. It just drags on at the end too. You know, there's too many endings. I feel like the movie ended 3 times, and it finally does. But it just kind of drags on a little bit at the end. There's like an extra 20 or 30 minutes we don't need. It takes too long to get us to Vegas, which if you've watched the trailers and you were excited about this movie, it's because of Bautista and the gang getting to Vegas and facing these zombies. That's why you tune in to watch this movie. So there was a lot of subplots and like stuff that was supposed to connect us to their backstories and their personal relationships. And like, it's just, you know, I feel bad because I think it is a good movie. And I think it was courageous for Snyder to do a lot of the things that he did. But my major problem with it is the human element to the film, or at least a lot of the human element to the film. The continuity issues with the plot holes that are kind of left there. Okay, we're going to get a sequel. I get it, whatever. It's going to come back around. Perhaps he'll tie it up in a bow. I don't know. But in just talking about this one movie, it was too long. I didn't connect to any of the human characters that apparently I was supposed to connect to. And the plot hole continuity issues in the screenwriting were overall the main issues for me. I absolutely love the zombie effects. I love the horror elements of this film. And I think Bautista gives an emotional performance that we've never seen from him, which I also like as well. So there you go. You have both. You have a kind of a 50-50 split, which is probably why it got 3 stars from me. I do want to rewatch it and revisit that score, but that's where it sits right now for the month of May for me, guys. My number 9 is a film that was released in theaters as well and then went to streaming on HBO Max as part of their deal with Warner Brothers. It's a film directed by Taylor Sheridan, who I really like. He did a film called Hell or High Water that I love. But it's a movie called Those Who Wish Me Dead. It stars Angelina Jolie, and I didn't do a review of this on my channel. I had intended to and never got around to it, and then it left me. It's a couple weeks old now, so you can't be old content on YouTube. It was really good. It was a taut thriller with great action sequences. Unlike Army of the Dead, this was also a movie that did connect me to a lot of the human characters in the film, particularly Jolie, particularly the young boy who I think is supposed to be 13 in the film, portrayed by Finn Little as Connor. But Angelina Jolie is basically a firefighter who in the Montana wilderness who helps prevent forest fires out there during the summer months. And she encounters him. I won't give away any plot spoilers. She encounters him in the woods because he's lost in the woods. I won't say why. And she kind of takes him under his wing and helps protect him. And then there's this whole other subplot going on with these hitmen that are trying to find him. So they're also in the woods looking for him. And she knows the woods so well because of her firefighting in these woods. So she kind of helps him escape these hitmen. Aidan Gillen of Game of Thrones fame is one of the hitmen in this film. And man, he is just chewing scenery, steals every scene he's in. He is such a great bad guy. He was on Game of Thrones too. You just never trust him. It's unfortunate for him as an actor because if you see him, you just can't trust him. And he takes on yet another role in this movie as Jack where he does that. So Nicholas Hoult also plays the other hitman. I love him. There's a lot of great kind of sub-performances in this film. Angelina Jolie shines in this movie, though. And it's been a while since we've seen her. She's going to be coming up in Eternals. So she's starting to kind of get a resurgence in her career, taking on these bigger roles, so to speak. But yeah, I love the movie. The writing was not as strong as I'm used to from Sheridan, but 3.5 stars is what I gave it over on Letterboxd. And I think it is a movie you should check out. If you have HBO Max, you can stream it. It was my number 9 that I enjoyed from the month of May. All right, guys, at number 8, let's talk about Cruella. Another film that I did a rapid reaction movie review here on my channel if you want to check it out. Cruella stars Emma Stone as Cruella DeVille, and then it also stars Emma Thompson as the Baroness, who is kind of like her rival in this movie. I also gave this movie 3.5 stars, and it is another movie that I want to rewatch. It's in theaters right now, and if you get Premiere Access, you can stream it on Disney+. You know, this is actually just came out this past weekend, so this is not one that I probably need to tell you a whole lot about. Plus, if you know the 101 Dalmatians story, you probably know who Cruella is, but this is a prequel / origin story to this iconic Disney villain, and Emma Stone portrays it in this live action version. And, you know, in the live action versions in the past, we got Glenn Close, who was amazing in this role. Emma Stone brings something new to it, though. She does turn it into her own. She makes it her own. She's not trying to mimic Glenn Close's performance, which I appreciate. There's a lot of things about this movie that I love, including the needle drops in the film. It has an amazing soundtrack. The cinematography and the aesthetics of the film are visually pleasing to me because they're very kind of like dark and grimy for that Disney story. You know, it's a PG-13 film. You don't always find PG-13 films on Disney+, but this is one of them, and it does get dark at times. You know, there's a scene with her makeup running, and I am Cruella, you know, and she kind of just like becomes that villain in that moment on screen because of tragedies that have happened to her. You know, it's a good origin story. The only problem with the movie and why I bumped it down from maybe like a 4 or even better is because the through line of this specific story and kind of her altercation with Emma Thompson is kind of dumb, in my opinion, because it's over fashion and who's the better fashion icon, who has a prettier dress, who, you know, and I know that I'm making that probably a little more simplistic than Craig Gillespie and the writers intended. But as a casual viewer, it's just kind of weird that, you know, fashion and her desire to be a popular fashion designer turned her into this villain that eventually kills dogs and makes coats out of them. So it was just a weird, like, jumping off point for that character. Again, I talk more about that in my rapid reaction review if you guys want to check it out. But I did really, really like this movie. Emma Stone, Emma Thompson, both bring the pain in this movie. Paul Walter Hauser is a great supporting role as one of her kind of right-hand minions in this movie. So I love it. Check it out if you have Disney Plus especially, and you want to get Premiere Access. Cruella is streaming over there, and there it sits for me for the month of May. My number 7 is a film called Oxygen, which is also a Netflix original that you can stream on Netflix. It stars Melanie Laurent, who I know mostly from Inglourious Basterds, an actress that I love. This is one of those films that's in the style of Buried with Ryan Reynolds. It's a film that takes place in one location, and it's a claustrophobic location. She's trapped in this pod, basically. It's a cryogenic pod, and I don't want to give anything away, but we find out where the pod is, which adds a new element to this. There's plot twists. There's a lot of sci-fi stuff going on that I can't really talk about without spoiling the movie. But at the end of the day, the film is about her being stuck in this pod in cryogenic sleep, and she wakes up, and she realizes that the oxygen in the pod, she only has a couple hours before the oxygen is gone. So she's trying to figure out how to get more oxygen or how to get out of the pod safely. It's locked. She can't get out, and it turns into a whole thing. So it is a sci-fi thriller in that respect. I don't want to give any other plot spoilers away. I would say watch Oxygen. It is a very pulse-pounding movie, and Melanie Laurent gives a tremendous performance in the film. I gave it 3.5 stars. Oxygen. is my number 7 for the month of May. All right, now we're getting up here, guys. So we're at number 6, and we're getting into my 4-star movies for the month of May. My number 6 is a movie called Spontaneous. Again, I can't give anything away with these because these are all new, pretty much new films, with the exception of maybe Ghoulies 4 earlier. It's currently streaming on Hulu and Amazon. So if you have either, you can check it out. It is a movie about high school kids who one day their classmates start to spontaneously combust and their bodies literally explode and blood goes all over the walls in the school, and it's a whole thing. So from a blood and gore horror aspect, it was really cool effects, I thought. There is some CGI blood in there, you can tell, which there almost has to be. It's literally everywhere whenever one of these instances occurs. But the story is about Catherine Langford's character and her newfound kind of like boyfriend who she's connecting with during this whole thing, finding out why it's happening. And they're trying to backtrack the steps to the first victim and find out, why are these kids exploding? They'll be in class, kids will explode. They'll be at this party for prom or whatever, kids are exploding. It's like done, it really adds a tension throughout the entire film, because whenever there's a moment where these kids are together, you think, oh my God, is somebody going to blow up? Is it going to be hers? Who's about to blow up? So even when it doesn't happen, you're still on the edge of your seat because you feel like it could happen at any moment, because it's a constant development throughout the film that continues happening, and they're trying to beat the clock to figure out why it's happening and how they can maybe cure this weird anomaly that's occurring to their classmates. I definitely recommend Spontaneous, especially if you're a horror fan. And this is one of those rare instances where it's a horror film, but it's a romance. It's almost like a rom-com with horror elements built into it, and you don't get a ton of those, very, very few of those. And it also appeals to the younger crowd. Catherine Langford, you'll know from Knives Out, but you'll probably also know, especially if you're a Netflix fan, from 13 Reasons Why. She was the main star in the first season of that show. And I love her. I think she's a great up-and-coming actress. And I thought Charlie Plummer, who plays the second lead in this film, also did a really good job. I was not familiar with him before this movie. But I recommend Spontaneous, guys. It's currently streaming on Hulu, and it is my number 6 for the month of May. All right, guys, let's get into my top 5 for the month of May. My number 5 is another film that I ranked 4 stars over on Letterboxd, and it is a film called Shiva Baby. Shiva Baby is a dark comedy that is absolutely hilarious. I absolutely love this movie. It was a pleasant surprise, one of the biggest surprises of the month of May for me, for sure. So Shiva Baby tells the story of a Shiva is like a Jewish funeral, basically. Our lead character, I don't want to give anything away. Our lead character, Danielle, has a profession that she doesn't want her family to know that she has. She gets to the funeral with all the Jewish extended family there, or I should say her sugar daddy, let's put it that way. Her sugar daddy shows up to the Shiva. Hijinks ensue. I'll just leave it at that. So she's trying to keep him and her profession from her family, who are all there. And then while this is playing out, Maya is the other lead character, her friend from when they were kids. And it turns out they have a thing. And she also doesn't want her family to know about that and the history with Maya. So that's kind of playing in the background. So it becomes a 90-minute juggling act for her. It's all shot in the one location at the Shiva. I loved it so much. It's such a subdued movie that I feel like if you like independent comedies, you're going to like it. The performance by Rachel Sennott, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and then I know Molly Gordon as well as Maya, they're queens. They're absolute queens. They nail these performances. They're funny. They're kind of like you feel for them. They have these sensitive moments. They have these hilarious moments. And it's a really empowering film for Danielle, too. Her character, she really has to deal with all these different things that are kind of weighing themselves onto her shoulders, and she has to come up with a way to really, cope with what's happening around her. But I love Shiva Baby, and I think everyone should check it out. If you are Jewish and you're in the Jewish community, you're probably going to like it even more. And if you haven't heard of it, please look it up immediately. It's absolutely hilarious. And it sits at my number 5 for the month of May. All right, guys. Sitting at my number 4 is a movie that I just saw a couple days ago that absolutely floored me. It's actually not even really a movie. It's a comedy special by Bo Burnham called Inside. This is a film, again, this is a special, I'll say, where Bo Burnham, and he's done these specials before, but the one that's different about this is that he did it during the pandemic. So he literally filmed this over the course of a year while he was stuck inside. He was stuck in his home, and he just films all these different skits, performs all these different songs, does all these different video edits, and then kind of like edits it together and pieces it together for us in this 90-minute work of art, in my opinion. I gave this 4 stars. I will absolutely rewatch this. And I got to be honest with you, it's probably going to rise. My rating is probably going to rise on a rewatch. But what's great about it is he really was forthcoming and honest with his feelings during the pandemic and during being stuck inside. So he really talks about, the effect on his mental health. He talks about the loneliness that a lot of us felt, especially somebody like him who doesn't have an immediate family that lives with him, wife, kids, that kind of thing. You get the sense of what the pandemic did to him over the course of a year. You see how it's kind of breaking him down mentally. And he filmed everything. So he had cameras all over his place. So not only are we seeing the movie that he made, but we're seeing his process of making it. So it's almost like you get behind the scenes footage and you get the actual movie itself all kind of at the same time. So it has a little bit of a reality TV kind of aspect to it in that way. But it's also really funny. I mean, there's a lot of he's known for that, but he does a lot of great music numbers that are just absolutely hilarious. They're important. They're satirical. It was such a great, like, transcendent experience to see the special. And you can't watch a comedy special and say it's a transcendent experience. But somehow I did with Bo Burnham's Inside. It just started streaming on Netflix a few days ago. I highly recommend watching it. I can't wait to rewatch it myself. It's my number 4. All right, my number 3 might be a little bit of a cheat because it's an animated short, but I rank anything that I see for the first time on Letterboxd, and that's what this series is, the Letterboxd LowDown. So my number 3 won the Oscar this past year for the best animated short, and it's a movie called If Anything Happens, I Love You. It's a 12-minute short animated and it's hand-drawn animation about parents dealing with the grief of losing their child during a school shooting. That's what it's about. It's 12 minutes, it's shot beautifully, and it's drawn beautifully. It literally looks like somebody hand drew it and just kind of like waving the paper in front of the camera. It's very revolutionary in that way. You don't get a ton of that type of hand-drawn animation that's really like stripped down without a lot of stuff added to it. But it tells a very important story, and it shows these parents dealing with grief, and it does it in such a short amount of time, and it makes such a huge impact. If Anything Happens, I Love You is only 12 minutes long. It won the Oscar last year. Everyone that's watching this has 12 minutes to spare, especially if you watch this far into the video. Go on Netflix, look it up. It's my number 3 for the month of May. All right, guys, we're down to the top 2. What's going to be my number 2? What's going to be my number 1? Regular followers of the show probably know 2 that have not been mentioned yet. My number 2 for the month of May is one that I saw on May 1st. So it's been a month since I saw this, and to be honest with you, I can't wait to revisit it. But it's another family film, and it's another animated film. It's The Mitchells versus the Machines is my number 2. You can check out my rapid reaction movie review right here if you'd like to do that. I also reviewed this one on my channel, so I won't say a ton about it now, except to say that this is so much fun, guys. It's a story about this quirky family, the Mitchells, trying to save the world from the robot apocalypse. That's what the movie's about. It has great voice casting in it from Danny McBride, Maya Rudolph, Abby Jacobson, Olivia Colman, who plays like a villainous character. So many great voice casts in it and just great animation. It's Lord Miller, so it's that kind of Spider-Verse vibe that we're used to that was revolutionary when that came out. We get hints of that here. So it's like half hand-drawn, half digital. It's an amazing film. You can obviously watch it with the whole family. The Mitchells versus the Machines was the second best movie that I saw last month. All right, so what was the number 1 movie I saw in the month of May? You guys know. I just saw it a few days ago at the premiere, and it is A Quiet Place Part 2, directed by John Krasinski, the sequel to obviously the wildly successful A Quiet Place from 2018. You can look right here if you want to check out my rapid reaction movie review to this one as well. So I won't spend a ton of time on it other than to say, as a horror fan, sequels literally do not get any better. There are very few horror sequels that I would put in the bucket with A Quiet Place Part 2. It is on par with the original. Millicent Simmons is finally the lead in this movie. She was more of a backseat in the first one. Her and Emily Blunt take on the load equally in this film. And she is a tremendous actress who actually is deaf and just does a great performance. Great sound mixing, great editing. The intercutting in this movie, guys, between the major storylines is phenomenal. It keeps you invested in each character's story. the way that Krasinski and the team edited it and intercut it back and forth. Emily Blunt, I mean, do I really need to say anything else? Emily Blunt, she's Mary Poppins. She's amazing. A Quiet Place Part 2, easily the best film I saw in the month of May, and I just saw it. So there you go, guys. That was a Letterboxd Lowdown for the month of May 2021. I had 18 new movies that I watched this month, and that was my ranking of them. I will put all of it down below in the comments for chapters if you want to skip through. And please look below, leave me comments. Did you see any of these movies in May? Which one was your favorite? Which one did I leave off? Which one was I way off on my ranking? I'm sure I was wrong. Somebody please tell me. And also subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys next time in the garage.